Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Retail has been undergoing an unprecedented transition of late, and the global pandemic speeded it up in a way maybe no one could have predicted. Online platforms have led to new sales channels and fresh opportunities to reach out to a world of consumers. And over the past 2 decades, more globalisation has opened markets and introduced new competitors into the mix in ways we maybe haven't seen before. In tougher economic times like we're experiencing now, we're also seeing a wave of online brands come and go faster than ever as competition for our money gets harder. I wonder how they can continue to win us over. Today, I'm speaking with Grant Arnott, who is the CEO of Global Marketplace, an Australian-based e-commerce group with businesses in Australia and New Zealand. He's a highly respected veteran of the online retail and business media and an accomplished entrepreneur. Grant is the founder of Click Frenzy. Most of you would have heard of that. It's Australia's original and best-known online shopping event, and Power Retail, the dedicated media and insights resource for the e-commerce industry. He's also launched the E-Commerce Leaders Playbook in 2012 and the Power Retail Top 100 in 2013 and the All-Star Bash in 2016. His pathway into e-commerce and entrepreneurship was somewhat unconventional. He's actually a university dropout, and Grant spent 6 years in California teaching water skiing before deciding to get a real job, and in his own words, found that Americans were quite, in fact, loony. He qualified to drive a boat and yell arms straight. He returned to his hometown of Melbourne, where he is today, to try his hand at freelance writing. Some initial gigs in tourism writing led to a real job with a publishing house specialising in business media, where he learned the craft of working with niche professional audiences to deliver engaging and useful content. In 2009, Grant helped to launch the first online retail conference in Australia, and there he saw the greenfields opportunity for e-commerce at that time. And the rest, as they say, is history. He's been doing lots of things over the past couple of decades, and in his personal time, he is married with 2 spoilt golden retrievers, plays over 50s AFL badly in his own words, and has a commercial helicopter licence, moonlighting as a tourist pilot on Phillip Island. So today our topic is around online retail, and I welcome you, Grant, to the Politics of Everything.
Thanks, Amber. Great to be here and speaking to everyone.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since day one of the Politics of Everything, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one solution to make the process quick and painless, the way it should be for those of us who just love great content and want to get our ideas out into the world. If you know me, I'm obsessed with quality in terms of my guests, my sound, and everything about my show has to be great the first time. I'm time poor. It's so easy to use Zencastr. I'm not tech savvy, and you don't need to be either. There's nothing to download. Just click on the link and off we go. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions now in their toolkit, you don't have to leave your browser to get that episode done, and done fast. I have a special offer for you, and hopefully you can experience what I have with Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my VIP code, the Politics of Everything, all lowercase and one word, to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. How good is that? I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. You've obviously had a very unconventional path to what you're doing now. When you were a lot younger, did you have an idea? You sound like you were quite sporty, but did you have an idea what you thought you might do in those early years, maybe as a teen and that sort of formative period?
Yeah, look, it was touched on already. So I always had a talent for writing from a very young age, always scored really well in English and just loved creative writing. So I guess that was my talent without necessarily being my first love, but something that I knew I was I was good at. So really thought someday I'd parlay that into a career. So it was, and my uncle was actually a journalist for The Age in Melbourne, which, made you a bit of a celebrity at that time. So I had, a good mentor there that steered me in the direction of journalism. And so that's really what I wanted to be, and actually had, a stint as a journalist. The water skiing bug came from just an opportunity, again, when I was in my teens, and just became obsessed with that sport, and found myself, getting involved at university level, and then getting an opportunity to coach overseas was just too good to pass up. So
yeah, what an adventure. It's an amazing
great
thing to be able to do when you're young. And I also lived overseas in my early 20s and never regret it. I think it's very formative, and obviously you have an appetite for entrepreneurship, and that's obviously testament to what you do today. Looking at the topic of online retail, how would you describe the current state of play for online retail, both in Australia and globally? We do have a huge audience in the US and parts of Asia as well. Holistically, is it thriving, or are we in sort of a bit of a plateau at the moment?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It is thriving relative to pre-pandemic times. So if you actually look at, if you said there'd be no pandemic and you were looking at current, growth rates and trajectories of online retail, you'd say it was thriving. The perception is that it's, or the conventional wisdom suggests that online retail is in struggle town.
Yes.
But it's relative to the tailwinds of COVID. What you saw through that period was just, unprecedented growth in e-commerce businesses, some of which were completely unsustainable. And what also happened is, from a general markets perspective, both in Australia and certainly internationally, you saw outsized valuations and outsized investments in businesses due to the runaway growth that, in hindsight, you say, okay, it was only going to last as long as the pandemic. Once stores reopened, people would be back to their normal shopping habits in droves. That's what's eventually happened. But those who suffered were those who overinvested in e-commerce, overinvested in stock, on the premise that the tailwinds and the growth rates of the COVID period were going to continue once normality resumed, and they haven't.
Yeah.
Growth rates have still been good. So again, I say,
so it's like a correction, really, which I think we see economically, broadly speaking, as well. Obviously, within that, there's winners and losers. We do know that for example, some major fashion brands that have lasted maybe 10, 20 years globally and in Australia, and some online platforms that they're associated with have actually been casualties. I saw one article which talked about, in the corporate world, we hate the great resignation after COVID-19, but the fashion industry particularly is having its own great reckoning. Obviously, that's a lot to do with the economy, and there are certain categories or verticals, if you like fashion, I imagine, which, people, the first thing that people wouldn't stop buying, as opposed to groceries, which we all just have to buy, even if they're 25% more than they were 2 years ago. There's obviously different categories within that, but I imagine, overall there's a bit of a correction happening. And do you think that that's kind of just the way things are, and that's where it will be for the next couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said there is correct in terms of the word correction, and what's happened with online retail, as you said, been exacerbated by the almost immediate follow-on of higher interest rates, higher fuel costs, inflation, higher costs of living, all of those things that dampen spending, and particularly discretionary spending, as you were talking about with fashion, a real casualty. And again, overinvestment leading to then a big backtracking of stock levels and things like that they're trying to move and can't move. So it's a real challenge for the fashion sector, but all of those discretionary categories, whether that's cosmetics and fragrances, homewares, things like that. If you think about online retailers who are also in categories like furniture and homewares, and that COVID period, everyone
bought stuff. Everyone bought stuff for a home office. I remember you couldn't get a standing desk for love or money.
but invested not just home office, but in the home. They were buying couches and
renovating.
And there was a boom on all these purchases that aren't going to happen again for another 5 to 10 years. In a lot of cases, whether it's white goods or furniture. So there's a lot of categories other than fashion that have been, really, really hit by all the disruption of COVID, and then the subsequent, decline in consumer spending on discretionary items has definitely had a dramatic impact on online retail. And we continue to see businesses going under, sadly, that just don't have the margins and the capitalization to be able to ride it out.
Absolutely. Supply chain resilience was obviously tested greatly during the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone remembers people kind of fighting over toilet rolls of all things and pasta. I thought no one ate carbs anymore, but here we are. But, the idea that nations like Australia, we shut our borders and then we had to become so-called self-sufficient. We weren't great at that. There were certain things we couldn't even get PPE, into the country, which was necessary from a health point of view. Obviously, we're back to normal, a new normal, and hopefully no more pandemics for a while. But there must have been some lessons learned for online retailers and brands in terms of that self-sufficiency. We do need the rest of the world. We need things like manufacturing in China to make it cost efficient for a lot of businesses. But there has been some talk even politically, amongst the government in Australia about some kind of localised manufacturing sector coming back and being, something we can focus on for the future. What are you seeing from the insider's view on that?
Well, I think supply chain and cost of supply, cost of logistics has been one of the great challenges and ongoing challenges for online retail. So not just COVID related, but just inflationary related as well, where, the cost of landing product into Australia has increased dramatically. And so that's just putting pressure on margins. So you've got this, challenge on both sides where the cost of doing business is rising, but revenues are a struggle. Sales are a struggle for just about every business for the reasons we mentioned earlier. So most businesses I speak to are really walking a tightrope at the moment, where they've got to manage rising costs in an environment of declining or flat revenues, and it's making it really tough. And this is where the cracks are really starting to appear. And I guess in terms of the lessons learned, you've got to your supply chain is everything. Front end. So when we're talking online retail, your front end website, your marketing practices, everyone's using the same marketing channels, largely Google and Meta. It's all very commoditized, so it's all very same, and the costs are very similar. I think those businesses that will thrive are those who have excellent supply chain efficiencies and management, and that's right through the entire supply chain, from sourcing through to logistics, being the management of your outbound deliveries to consumers, the management of your returns, all of those things. That's, to me, where the tests will come in terms of survivability in again, a tough environment. And I think, we will continue to see the consolidation of those who don't understand that and focus too heavily on, and this will be an unpopular opinion, but there's such a huge focus on customer excellence and customer service and customer experience, which comes at an enormous cost. And there's, sometimes this insane race to be the best at customer service at all costs, but the true cost is no profitability or negative profitability, and that's
in which case you don't have a business to service anyone at all, do you? So I think while it might be an unpopular opinion, it's an honest opinion, and I think that's what you need in this environment.
Yeah, I think if you look at businesses, that offer free shipping, free returns, and all that stuff, benefits for customers, it catches up with you, and they've set this baseline expectation that the customers expect that now. And if you're not offering that, well, you're not making any sales. So it's a vicious cycle that I think we're seeing it now. It's really bringing a lot of businesses unstuck, and I think it will become very soon a survival of the fittest. And I think we're going to see that play out, this Christmas and into next year.
Absolutely. I read one McKinsey report which talked about, both big and small retailers being pressured at the same time as all the other things you've talked about, being pressured to reduce, obviously, their environmental impact. And there's obviously lots of focus on things like climate change, resource management, biodiversity. I know fashion, and particularly fast fashion, accounts for 4% of greenhouse gas emissions, for example, which is a fair amount considering, fashion is only one category. Consumers obviously pay attention to that. Being sustainable can be a bit of a marketing greenwashing thing, but it actually matters. I think it's interesting because when I look at, say, for example, I'm a Gen X, but I look at the younger generation, when we never had fast fashion growing up, it wasn't around. So this idea of, daily drops in shopping centres of certain brands, it's so much waste. We do know that even furniture, not people just buy new furniture like they're buying, new clothes, new fashion every year. We just throw out that old bed, or we just, nothing's really refurbished. How are sort of those competing factors driving business? We know one hand, consumers want to feel good about what they're buying. They want to know their environmental footprint, their supply chain source, where stuff has come from. They don't want child labour, all those sorts of things. But to be greener and leaner is obviously a cost, an actual real cost to a business as it's kind of going down that pathway. What are you seeing in that space? Is there something across the board, not just in fashion, but you talked about things like, obviously furniture and other areas as well. Are you seeing still a demand for that, or is that just a nice to have because of all the other things that are happening at the moment with the economy?
Yeah, this is such a polarizing topic, Amber, and such a major topic of conversation that I have with our audience over many years now, and particularly the last 4 years. I think what we're seeing is, yes, there is pressure. There is an expectation that brands have to stand for something and have to have a sustainability policy. Even ourselves, we publish something called the Sustainability Index, the Sustainability Spotlight, where we call out retailers who are doing well. It's not a name and shame list, but it's those who are doing well in terms of appropriate investment in sustainability initiatives. The consumers say they care and probably do, but
are they willing to pay more? That's always the question I have.
To pay more, and this comes up time and time again in conversations with retailers. I was just at a conference recently where one of the heads of Puma internationally was talking about this very matter and was very adamant that what they say in every survey versus what their actions indicate commercially are two very different things when it comes to consumers and their willingness to choose brands on the basis of their sustainability or spend more on a brand because it's sustainable is just not the case. So again, that poses a real challenge for retailers trying to be good corporate citizens, and we want them to. We want to have sustainability initiatives in place, and this is why I'm personally opposed to brands who say, or online retail businesses who call themselves out as being sustainable champions, but still offer free shipping, free returns. Those two are mutually exclusive. You can't do that and have parcels flying around everywhere without significant environmental impact, no matter what you do with your packaging or something like that. So, and I also don't think that consumers see it as environmentally friendly. They see it, they are again an unpopular opinion, but I think people are self-interested by nature.
Yeah, and convenience matters, and cost. Let's be honest.
And that's right, and even more so, as you mentioned, in tougher economic times where you don't have a lot of spare change, you're going to first and foremost choose brands on the basis of price and just whether you like it or not. And sustainability, even though every survey suggests that it's a top priority for consumers, when it actually comes to the point of purchase and checkout, it just does not appear to be a differentiating factor or a deterrent if a brand doesn't actually have a sustainable practice at that point.
Yeah, and are you seeing it? Is there differentiation within different categories, for example? Like, are people, for example, happy to have the $5 T-shirt, that they don't really know where that cotton's come from or the processes involved because it's just fashion and they got like 50 T-shirts and, it's not something, versus investing in, say a bed or something they're going to have for years? Is there ways in which you're seeing there's nuance within that, or is it overall the same thing?
I couldn't honestly answer off the top of my head now, just in terms of category differentiation. I suspect, given those two that you mentioned and others that I could think of, I suspect it would just be pretty even across the board in terms of, there will absolutely be an element of customers that will, look at the brands and buy from brands that, they want to feel good about purchasing from because they are ethical. I think ethical sourcing is one that there is a lot more consumer interest in perhaps than sustainability, because people. I think there's a big difference between, okay, is this packaging renewable versus has this shirt I'm wearing been made by someone who's being beaten in a factory in some third world country. I think there is definitely a little bit of a preference towards brands demonstrating ethical sourcing, and so I
Yes.
would suggest that that's perhaps a bit more of a priority over environmental concerns, just from what I've seen.
Yeah, anecdotally, that's what you're saying, and I guess well, time will tell where that lands. But I do always think it's sort of, to me, it mirrors a little bit what happens in political cycles. When times are good, things like you do polls and you'd see like climate change is the number one issue of our time,
Mm.
but because of where we're at, people would now say cost of living is, and those other things kind of move down, in terms of their priority for people.
Yeah,
So,
again, it does come back to self-interest at the time, and that's right. And people, are always concerned about climate change, and rightly so. And what is great is what I've seen evolve over the last 15 years in e-commerce now is the evolution of the consistent focus and the agenda item that is sustainability. So it will have impact, lasting impact, and it does move brands to do the right thing, because no one wants to be seen as the one outlier that's not actually investing in that area. But it is hard to commercialize it and monetize it. But it's still something that I think good businesses are all committed to, and that's a good thing.
absolutely, moving in the right direction. What are some of the best or most innovative trends or tools that you're seeing in online retail right now? You touched on earlier this idea of customer experience and bricks and mortar stores. I remember doing an interview with another expert in a similar space a few years ago, and they were talking about, versus the online experience, people wanting to go in and have something different in a store. Are there things in online retail that you're seeing that are kind of moving the needle and keeping us interested, because it is hard to compete? And I think now more than ever, we get fatigued of everything, including online shopping, after a while.
Yeah, there's a couple of areas of really strong focus and investment currently, and one is loyalty. So I think there's, in a time of challenging economic times, loyalty becomes really important. There's plenty
And
of
what, being rewarded for our loyalty? How are you seeing that play out?
loyalty technology that makes it's, I guess if we're talking about technology in terms of tools, loyalty technology that makes it much easier to implement rewards and points and track spend and things like that for consumers, where you are going to be rewarded for repeat spending. So I think retailers have really worked out that there's now pretty full penetration in terms of online shopping. So
Yeah.
it's slowing down in terms of new customer acquisition opportunities across the board. So then they're turning inward, saying, well, we need to protect and derive value from the customers we've got, rather than spending a lot on customer acquisition. And hence there's been an increasing focus on loyalty and emerging loyalty technology that just makes that customer experience of buying from a retailer more fun, more rewarding, more often as well. So that's one area,
Absolutely.
and then the other big one that's an ongoing buzzword in 2024 is AI and artificial intelligence. I don't see anyone that's completely cracked it from a strategic perspective, but there's just a lot of interest and investment in AI as a means for optimizing workflows, for customer service, for content creation. So again, if you're an online retailer, utilizing AI to increase the efficiency of how much content you can get on your site, whether that's product descriptions or blog posts or FAQs and things like that. Chat bots, becoming imperative for customer service. So I think there's a lot of investment and interest in that area. As I say, I haven't seen any breakout strategies yet that in the online retail space that are using AI brilliantly, but I think that's a huge area of focus for retailers at the moment, and certainly something that everyone seems to be really focused on delivering on.
Yeah. Watch this space. I think it's still evolving, the AI thing. And I think everyone's trying to be in the race to the top. But who knows, what that looks like, I guess, at the moment. So what's been your number one tech tool in either your business or your personal life, Grant, that you've really found useful, and why has it been so good for you?
Look, as a CEO of a startup, I probably go to Xero, frankly, for.
That's a far more boring answer than I thought you were going to give me, but I'll
Yeah,
take
I'm sorry for not being sexy there, Amber. But I tell you, nerdy as it sounds, Xero can be pretty sexy. Look, I think what Xero did was revolutionise accounting software, and
I would agree with that. Yeah.
But what it brought was the ability for a business owner like myself to have so much greater instantaneous visibility over every aspect of the business. And if I think about my go-to tool on a daily basis, sadly, is Xero, and it's just I'm fascinated by trend data, and I just find that from a business owner's perspective, monitoring all the trend data within our financials and being able to cut different parts of the business up and do trend analysis. We have, as you mentioned, a global marketplace is a head company of 3 very different businesses, including a business in New Zealand called Grab One. So for me, that's something. If I had one thing I couldn't do without, I would say it's Xero at the moment. But yeah, in terms of other ones that we use, and again, pretty boring, but Microsoft Teams is really valuable. In terms of one that's, I suppose, outside what most people are using would be Monday for workflow management. We just find that tool fantastic. And
yeah, I agree.
But look, I'm a 52-year-old man who's not on the tech tools that often, so I don't have anything sexy to
no, that's good. I mean, to be fair, there was a stream of people that I think I had 3-4 guests in a row that all said Canva. So there you go. But they were sort of.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Space.
No, our team uses Canva religiously. See, I'm still a sad old PowerPoint guy. But one thing I saw the other day that I don't have yet, but I attended a video meeting, and one of the attendees basically had a bot attend the meeting on his behalf.
Oh my goodness!
Taking notes for him. I thought, wow, that was pretty cool.
And there was no shame in that, which is interesting, right?
No shame in that. No, it's like
cloning yourself.
I am representing
me
person, and I will be taking notes on his behalf. And away it went. Who knows what the outcome was? But I thought that was the way of the future.
Oh, well, I've not heard of that before, so that's definitely novel. What's been your best life lesson so far, and what has it taught you?
Look, I think I love impact. I love being on the cutting edge and doing new things that people haven't done before. Personally, that's in business, and maybe sometimes in life as well. And I think there was a quote for me that I heard that was, "It's better to be first than it is to be better." So we've always sought to break new ground, even if we've got a minimum viable product, just to get in market, and we found great success with that. And we like to just do things that, I really pride myself and us as a business on doing things that aren't the same as everybody else, except using Xero, because we believe in that.
Absolutely, back to Xero. And just a final takeaway message for us today on the politics of online retail.
Oh, look, business is tough, but I think clever businesses are absolutely going to survive. Profit is everything at the moment. I think in times like this, you've really got to run a lean, intelligent business. You've really got to look hard at costs. I was speaking to someone from a major retailer the other day that said, they're doing exactly that. They're factoring in, they're not, creating ambitious growth targets that are unrealistic in the current climate. Instead, they're actively looking at operational efficiencies across every component of the business. And I think that's, the times that we're in are very, if you're going to thrive and there's thriving available, it really comes down to, ruthless attention to every cost right down the line, because when you can build good profits and grow your profits, even if your top line growth is not growing, you will be in fantastic shape and be very much in favour with investors who are looking, for those types of businesses, not those that, continue to burn cash and haven't adjusted to, the current climate and current market.
Sage advice for tough times. Thank you so much for being on the show. If you do want to connect further with Grant or his businesses, there are details on the show notes. Until next time, do take care. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.